Hey everybody, welcome to Do You Believe on Paranormal ZoneTV. Thanks everyone for joining me tonight. I'm really excited about tonight's show. Also, for those of you who have, if this is your first time to my show, if you would please subscribe to my channel, I'd really appreciate it. So anyway, tonight my subject is In Search of the Mothman, the Grinning Man, and Indrid Cold. And I have a part 1 and a part 2. My first guest is Paul Eno, and we're going to talk about Mothman. He's going to talk about Mothman and Indrid Cold, and if there is any connection. Paul Eno, here's my guest. Paul Eno is a radio show host Beyond the Paranormal. He's an author. He has some fabulous books out. I have his website. Both of them, beyondtheparanormal.com and newenglandghost.com. So if you would please check out his website, the books are awesome. So tonight, let's all welcome Paul. Paul, thanks so much for joining me tonight on the show. Because this, the Mothman and Indrid Cold, it's an absolutely fascinating topic. Now, so do you want to start with the Mothman and what the connection is with Indrid Cold? I know because the second part of the show. Let me just tell them about the second part. The second part is the daughter, Tanya Derenberger Bowman, and she is the daughter of Woodrow Derenberger, who is a legend it came from the 1966 when he had an encounter with Indrid Cold. And so, but it all starts back with, anyway, so we're going to start this out with Mothman. So go ahead, Paul.
Okay, well, Mothman was the name the media gave to a very strange creature or group of creatures that was seen really beginning on November 12, 1966 in western West Virginia, near the Ohio border, in this particular case, Clarendon, West Virginia. There were a couple of fellows who were digging a grave, and they saw this sort of man-like figure fly low from the trees over their heads. And this was the first of a number of sightings of this Mothman creature, which was generally described as mostly wings, and then there's 2 legs and a body, but really no head. There were 2 red eyes glowing out of, I guess, what would have been the neck. One of those things you really couldn't make it up. A few days later, November 15th, 2 young couples from Point Pleasant, West Virginia, on the Ohio River, Roger and Linda Scarberry and Stephen and Mary Millette, were parking, as they'd say, and they made a point of really tell everybody that they were married couples, and that the headlights of their car picked up these glowing red eyes, and they took off, and this creature followed them, flying above their car, so they said, at up to 100 miles an hour, leaving just before they got back into town. And this was the beginning of a long series of events involving this Mothman creature. However, my son Ben and I, Ben works with me and co-hosts the show with me, we believe that these areas, such as the Ohio Valley in this case, are at times, or have been through history, flap areas. And a flap in paranormal parlance just means a bunch of events happening at the same time. It's generally, you'll hear of a UFO flap or something like that, but we believe that you have all sorts of paranormal events going on that are seemingly unrelated, because we believe that it works not by necessarily aliens or anything coming far distances from other planets, but with sort of a multiverse thing, as is postulated in physics. You have parallel worlds that interact, energy exchanges all the time, but the trouble is that many of the laws of physics from one world to another are different. So you can have things like Mothman and flying and all this business, and sometimes these worlds intersect. That's the way we look at it anyway. So that if you look beyond the Mothman situation at that period in '66, and then for about a year and a half after that, you have a situation where you've got people seeing ghosts. There was an increase in poltergeist activity. There were all kinds of UFOs. And Ben and I were down there in '03 to speak at the conference in Parkersburg. And we talked to a number of the witnesses who were around in the area during the Mothman period, and they reported not just Mothman sightings, but red eyes looking in their windows, sometimes staring out from under their furniture, footsteps on their roofs, poltergeist poltergeist activity, apparitions, huge birds, UFOs, sometimes hovering over their houses, men in black who would come supposedly from the Air Force or other agencies that they found out later didn't exist and would tell them not to talk about what they saw. There was an increase even in psychic abilities, supposedly, by these people. Very often the Mothman itself would appear and people would be utterly terrified. They would have to keep staring at it. They wouldn't be able to move. However, now and then there was a positive experience. There's a person who was on our show who had when he was a boy a sort of a Mothman experience or a sighting, and all of a sudden he developed great artistic ability. His marks went to Pluto in school, and he became sort of a better person. So he thinks Mothman was kind of almost like an angel and helping him improve. So it all depended on your experience when he had talked to, but Mothman was simply the most common phenomenon, or the best known phenomenon, in a huge series of events. Now, Indrid Cold, and some people think Mothman and Indrid Cold were the same being, although they didn't look alike, was supposedly a occupant or a driver of a UFO.
Right. And
Tanya will get into that when you talk to her. So this was simply the best known phenomenon in the midst of a flap involving many kinds of phenomena that were seemingly unrelated, but really were, I think, because they were involved with a multiversal intersect in the same physical area of our world.
Now, what about the Grinning Man? That's all supposed to be a part of this as well.
Well, it is. That's kind of elusive, and there are certain, I suppose you could call them archetypal figures that appear in the paranormal. I've run into the man in the checkered shirt, the little girl with flowers in her hair, usually with blonde hair, and of course the Grinning Man is another one of these sort of archetypal figures. And as it's been explained to me, this was common in the Mothman phenomena, in that flap area at the time. And the Grinning Man, too, was seen in the area where I live, too, in northern Rhode Island in the 1960s. It's strange that these things were seen in different places. And this was simply a very humanoid-looking person with a rather unnaturally wide grin, okay? Mm-hmm. And it is generally interpreted in the field as being some sort of alien or something like that. I don't know about that, but that's general interpretation. It seems to be a very common archetypal apparition in a number of cases that involve UFOs.
Now, the Mothman is supposed to bring bad luck, and he's a forewarning for death and disaster, but they also say that Mr. Cold, Indrid Cold, is the same thing.
Well, in the case of Mothman, and then of course a film was made out of John Keel's book, The Mothman Prophecies, involving the collapse of what was known as the Silver Bridge on December 15th, 1967. And supposedly the Mothman appearances were a precursor to this disaster where 46 people were killed. And what occurred after that was supposedly Mothman never was seen again. However, if you really look into it, Mothman was seen before November 66, and she or it was seen on a number of occasions after that. There are people who say they continue to have Mothman experiences. There are things really all over the world where this archetypal figure, if you will, Mothman is, if you want to call it that, is sometimes reported, and does seem to be a precursor to some kind of disaster from time to time. Supposedly, it was seen in the Ukraine before the Chernobyl disaster. Supposedly, it was seen in Minnesota before the bridge collapsed a few years ago, and this sort of thing. But again, one never knows because it's really not well documented. But a lot of people saw this Mothman, or more than one, particularly in an area known as the TNT area, which was a former World War II area where some military testing occurred, and there were some abandoned buildings, and people supposedly saw this creature, or more than one, in this area. So it's a deep well, this thing, and there's even supposedly a photograph of Mothman on the bridge, though I don't know how legitimate.
Oh, yeah, I showed a picture of that.
Yeah, well, you never know with this stuff, but it was well attested enough to be sort of, in my opinion, kind of beyond doubt. There is a matter of fact, there's even a Mothman Museum in Point Pleasant,
right,
West Virginia, which is a very interesting place. Ben and I have been there, and it's great. They're the great folks down there, and they have a Mothman festival every September, so it's something to check out.
Now, we all know, well, we know that John Keel wrote the book Mothman Prophecies, and of course they made the movie, and Indrid Cold played a significant part in that movie. Now, what I read about John Keel is that he did actually receive phone calls from this Indrid Cold.
Well, supposedly he did. It's very interesting that in working with the paranormal, you often find that really electromagnetic energy and brains, as a BRANES, as in membranes, as physicists call them, are apparently what seem to divide one reality from another, and you can cross that and things can happen, and I think that's how the paranormal works. But the electrical phenomena that one sees associated with the paranormal, and particularly in cases like this, is very interesting. When you go into a house and you have bizarre things going on, people will often say, well, the microwave turned on, or the television turned on, or this or that happened that was electrical, the vacuum cleaner or something. And you find that large numbers of houses that are near high-tension wires, where you have the really powerful currents going through nearby, you'll have paranormal phenomena, or what appear to be paranormal phenomena going on. And in the same way, in the Mothman case, you had a lot of electrical phenomena, such as electronic voices almost coming through telephones, telephones ringing when they weren't even connected, and things of this kind. And John Keel said, yes, that he had received literally phone calls from this. People talk about getting phone calls from the dead and all this, and any electrical device can be associated with certain paranormal phenomena from time to time. So yeah, John Keel did talk about that.
Now, there's no more. Are there any more sightings or any more current talks about people being contacted by this Indrid Cold or Mothman?
Well, the names may change, but the phenomena don't. I mean, every once in a while we run into, strange phone calls. We have strange interference sometimes on our shows, because that could be something else. I remember we were doing the whole series on the Rendlesham Forest UFO case. We did it on CBS Radio for the first two shows, but they had a brand new studio, and none of the engineers could understand why there was laughing in the background, electronic noises, guests were cut off, and we had to switch to another venue because CBS couldn't deal with it. If you can imagine, brand new studio. So there are all kinds of electrical things going on. The Mothman sightings, again, the names may change, but the phenomena may have the same root. It's very difficult to tell if you don't witness it yourself. So, yeah, supposedly Mothman or something like it is being seen around the world, and as John Keel said, the entire planet is really haunted, and I think that's well put.
Yeah.
This is a normal state of things when the paranormal is not paranormal at all. It's quite normal.
What about the Men in Black?
Well, that's interesting, too. We've looked into that as well. They call the Men in Black actually, they're supposedly in black suits, driving in black cars, rather nice ones, actually, but a lot of people in the area of the Mothman occurrences said that strange people would come to the door wearing sunglasses and would come in, sometimes did not seem familiar with common courtesy, such as shaking hands. There were several reports that they would, before they finished their strange interviews about what did you see and please don't talk about it, they would see an ashtray on a desk and ask if they could keep it, and then walk away as if they had some amazing kind of artifact or something. Then they disappear around the corner in this black car. Other people would appear in Air Force uniforms, but those but veterans would recognize the insignia were either wrong or in the wrong places on the uniforms, and things of this kind. So it was really very, very strange. And Keel, as far as I know, really never ventured an opinion about what these were. But whoever they were, they didn't seem too familiar with the way we do things. And there were very often dire warnings that people should keep their mouths shut about this, what they had witnessed. And you still hear about that sort of thing. It's never happened to me yet, but I know people to whom it has happened. So that's the Man in Black phenomenon.
Oh, awesome. Okay, well, I think that's a great introduction into Tanya's story when we go into Woodrow Derenberger's. Is there anything else you want to tell the viewers about this phenomena?
Well, just say hello to Tanya for me, and I'll tell you what somebody on our station used to say, keep watching the skies.
Oh, yeah, I love that. That's from the movie The Thing with James Arness.
Oh, really? That must have been where my friend got it.
Oh, yeah, that's where it came from.
For 50 years.
Oh, yeah. I love that. Okay. Hey, Paul, thanks again so much for joining my show. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Always nice, Doreen. Take care.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Okay, so if you wait just a second, everybody, I'm going to go into part 2, and I'm going to call Tanya right now. So just please stand by. Thank you. Hey everybody, welcome back to part 2. My second guest is Tanya Derenberger Bowman. In 1966, her father had an encounter with Indrid Cold, or I believe they just called him Mr. Cold, and he became quite a legend with this encounter. And Tanya is the daughter of Woodrow Derenberger. She has also written a book. Let me bring this up. She actually rewrote her father's book with some more text and I guess some pictures in it. And we'll be talking about that as well. So everyone, let's welcome Tanya to the show. Hey Tanya, thank you so much for coming on the show tonight. I'm so excited to have you and hear your story.
Hey Noreen, thanks. It's great to be on.
Oh, thank you. Hey, so you know what? Can we just give a little bit of breakdown information on your father? I don't know if
Sure.
When you do these interviews, I don't know if anybody asks you, but I think it's a good place to start is to know a little bit about your father first.
Okay. Well, Dad passed away in 1990, and he quit talking basically about UFOs in 1986. He talked off and on about them from 1966 to 1986, but he really quit talking a lot about them in 86. Why, I don't know. He would talk to me, but he wouldn't talk to anybody else about them. And, I mean, back then Dad was a sewing machine salesman / repairman. He had also worked for Union Carbide and O-Ames here in Parkersburg. He had quite a few different jobs. He had to drift from job to job because of a lot of this. In fact, just like we had to move from place to place, and they always found us no matter where we were.
All right, so why don't we go into how this all started? His first meeting.
Well, Dad was driving down I-77 from Marietta, Ohio, coming home from work late one night, and it was a rather windy night, which nobody knew but us, because that was not even really mentioned in the book. But he got pulled over on the side of the road by this blinding light and this thing that appeared to be a craft of some sort. And next thing you know, a man appeared at his window and seemed to be talking to my dad through mental telepathy. It's almost like my dad could read his mind. And he had quite a conversation with him. The man turned around and got back on the ship and left. At the same time, the other thing that's not known very well is that there was an accident on I-77 blocking both ways on the freeway. So it was kind of my dad and this craft in the middle of the freeway. But in the extended version of the book that I have kind of rewritten to add more text and that I took off of my dad's main manuscripts that I had dug up, is more eyewitness accounts of people who saw the same thing that night.
Did they actually see the ship floating in the air above the car of your father's truck?
They don't explain what they saw, that they saw that, but they did see the ship.
All right, let's go in the timeline. I have a whole timeline because I've listened to your dad's. I also have some recordings from original recordings from 1966 when he did his first interview, a live interview. Right. I can play some of those as well. Let's see. I have, okay, let me play this for the viewers. This is the beginning of the incident, and this is how your dad, he's going to explain it. It's not very long. Hold on.
I am a salesman, and I drive a truck. And last night, shortly after 7 o'clock, I was coming from Marietta, Ohio, coming down Interstate 77. And just before I came to the intersection of Route 47, there was a car past me, overtaking me from behind.
Yeah, I clipped some clips off of that interview that he did on that. It was actually a TV show. I thought it was radio.
Behind past me, this
I have it on
close
TV.
behind it, and it swerved directly in front of my truck, turning crosswise. When it turned crosswise, it slowed down. It started slowing not abruptly or too fast, but it gave me plenty of time.
But if people want to hear it, I mean, they can hear it on YouTube or...
Oh, yeah.
But it forced me to come to
I mean, I saw CDs of that as well.
Oh, my
God. I'm preparing an audio version of the book.
My light just exploded.
Oh, gee.
Oh, wow, my light just exploded. Okay, so that was the beginning of, he was telling in the interview about his incident. So go ahead, let's go ahead, let's start the timeline. Go ahead and tell his story from there.
Okay, well, Dad got home, and my brother and I were still up watching TV. And he came in the house, and he was as white as a sheet, and I've never seen my dad afraid of anything. My dad was a rather stocky man. He went into the kitchen, and my mother automatically knew something was wrong, as did I. My brother didn't really pay much attention to him coming in the house. And he sat down at the kitchen table, and he started telling my mom the story, which I didn't get to hear a whole lot of because my brother and I were immediately sent to our rooms. Of course, my brother obeyed. I snuck back downstairs and hid behind a chair because I was always the nosy kind that wanted to know what was going on, especially when my dad comes in like that. So my mom immediately called the police department. At that time, her cousin was the sheriff in Wood County, and the policeman came over. Two policemen came over, including her cousin, which was also not in the book, which I'll explain further in my book that I'm writing.
Tanya, now you're talking about when your dad came home and he was telling your mother about the incident. Right. I want to go back to, because I didn't play the whole audio, it was just the beginning where, okay, so let's start where Mr. Cold came to his car. I have it all in a timeline. Mr. Cold came to his car and talk about the spaceship.
Yeah, he said that the spaceship was more cylindrical around the middle. He said it almost resembled the chimney to like a oil lamp.
Yeah, I'm showing him a picture of it.
Yeah. And Mr. Cold came to the window, and all of a sudden my father started hearing a man's voice, even though he did not roll down his window. And Mr. Cold introduced himself, and he asked my dad what the lights were in the distance. My dad explained to him that it was a city called Parkersburg, and Indrid Cold said that they had the same type of a thing on their planet, which was in another solar system, and they called it a gathering. Indrid Cold asked my dad what he did for a living. My dad explained to him, and Indrid Cold said he was a searcher. Basically what a searcher was, and to my knowledge still is just like a scout going around trying to figure out what the different planets were and what were on different planets and things like that. Mm-hmm. Why he chose my father, I don't have a clue.
Okay, Tanya, I have a clip again from the interview that your father did from 1966. I believe it was still in 66. I think it was a week after the incident that he had this interview, and this is where he talks about the searcher.
Yeah, actually, it was just days after the incident that he did the interview.
And I explained to him what I was. He even asked me where I lived, and I told him. And I told him that I was a salesman. And he told me that he was a searcher. He didn't offer me no information other than this, but at 2 or 3 times he did tell me, he said, "Mr. Derenberger, look at me." He said, "Do not be frightened." And I believe if I hadn't have been frightened, I believe that I could have understood a lot more of what he wanted me to than what I actually did. Asked me if I...
Okay, so go ahead with the story.
Okay, so once they talked about, the city of Parkersburg, he told my father, you could tell my father was a little afraid, and he said, "Don't be afraid, I fear you no harm." Or have no fear, I mean you no harm.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And that put my dad to rest a little bit. Before Indrid Cold left, he told my dad he would see him again. And as I said, it was just days after the sighting, actually, and the encounter with Indrid Cold that Dad was on the radio. And I heard your questions to Paul Eno about the Men in Black and that, and if they exist, I have no idea. Nobody like that really... I couldn't tell you that I could tell apart Indrid Cold from a description from Man in Black. Because when Indrid Cold would show up at our house with his friend, his sidekick, as one would put it now, Carl Ardo, they would show up in suits and sunglasses and black fedora hats.
You mean they actually showed up at your house?
Oh yeah. We had hundreds of people outside of our house waiting to see the spacemen, but they couldn't tell these guys apart from any other businessman, so they had no idea that these guys were at our house. My father brought home a refrigerator box that I called my spaceship to Mars. And Indrid Cold actually helped me design it a little bit on the inside. And I wish my dad had taken pictures of it back then, because I would love to exactly see what it looked like. My dad kind of explained it to me, but I couldn't explain it to him.
Now,
sketch artist if I had to.
I read that Ingrid Cold would show up in just like a Volkswagen. He was driving an ordinary Volkswagen. Did you see that Volkswagen?
Well, there were so many people at our house that no, I didn't see the Volkswagen because he had to park so far away. I couldn't tell you how he exactly got there because there were, like I said, there were hundreds of people at our house, day and night. What frightened me, I didn't frighten easily. And I went up with, I would go up and talk to these strangers, and my mom would make them coffee and lemonade and everything else for a while until she got sick of it. And
you mean the people coming to the house, not Ingrid Cold?
Right, yeah, strangers. But what scared me was at nighttime we'd have people outside, so I'd be hearing voices all night long. And we'd have men in the trees in our backyard with guns waiting for the spacemen to show up.
Oh, my God. I'm going to play a recording also now of your father giving the description of Ingrid Cold. So this is the description of Ingrid Cold. This is from her father, Woodrow Derenberger.
He had a top coat on, and it was zippered down the front. His top, the top two buttons, like my coat here, were open, and this outfit was a shiny material. It was a glassy outfit, like it was metallic, I suppose you would call it. And his shirt was a little bit darker than his jacket. And below his coat, he had on trousers of the same kind of a cloth material, and I believe the trousers were just a shade lighter than his coat. He looked perfectly natural and normal as any human being. He had his face looked like he had a good tan, a deep suntan. His hair was combed straight back, and it was a dark brown. And he seemed to have a good thick head of hair. And his eyebrows, his face, his features were very normal. Say he was close to 6 feet tall, and he'd weigh around 180 or 185. He had a top coat on, and it was zippered down the front.
When he came to your house, was he dressed in the description that your dad had given with the blue metallic outfit?
No, like I said, they were in business suits.
Oh.
They were in more of a shiny. It was made out of a shiny, silky material, so you could tell that they were on the more expensive side if it was a business suit. But that's how they showed up at our house because they didn't want to stand out. They didn't want to make any more problems for my family than we had already had. But he wanted to keep in touch with my father.
Did he ever say why he picked your dad out of everybody that was on that highway?
Because my father was just an ordinary working man. So he figured that my father would be the most believable person to hear to.
But so...
In fact, my father told me, even before he passed away, that since on Lanulus they lived to be 125 to 175 years old, Indrid Cold had told him several years before that not to worry about me because Dad was in West Virginia at that time and I was in Cleveland, Ohio with my mom. Not to worry about me, but I would always be watched over.
Do you... Now, I read that anybody that has met up with Mothman or Ingrid Cold had bad luck. Do you feel that happened to you and your family?
I only believe that happened to me and my family because of the incident, because it was so publicized. It did break my parents' marriage apart, and so that was bad luck. And what's really strange is that, a lot of people come down with these mysterious illnesses and stuff, and 12 years ago I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, and today I'm confined to a wheelchair.
Oh my God. When was the last time you talked to Ingrid Cold or seen him?
I have not talked to Indrid Cold in quite a few years. I've seen him here and there. In fact, my mom told me on her deathbed, she always denied this story, but then she told me on her deathbed that, what my dad said was true, and she would go to the store with me and my brother, or even by herself, and before she even took the bags out of the car, he would be able to tell her who she saw, who she talked to, what she bought. And my mom thought that was a little strange, but then she found out that my father had some sort of a psychic ability, apparently, because she knew nobody was following her.
Have you tried any kind of mental telepathy to try and communicate with this Indrid Cold?
I have, but I've been told that he will contact me when he feels it's necessary. I have, since I've been back in Parkersburg just since last November, after living in Cleveland for a year and a half with my family, I moved back to Parkersburg to my root. My husband and I separated while I was in Cleveland. But I have not really tried, but I have been seeing more what they call shadow people. And one of them is a shadow of a man in a fedora hat. And whenever I say the name Indrid, is that you? It disappears. And I was told once by, I believe it was Rosemary Guiley, that probably more or less likely is Indrid Cold watching me. I know when I look out my window in my apartment even, or when I would look out the window at when I was with my daughter before I just moved into my apartment, I would see strange lights and know that, have a feeling of that I'm safe. Because I'm in my apartment by myself, and I was very apprehensive about it. But the first night I was here, I purposely went to the window and tried to make communication, and I saw some lights in the sky, and then all of a sudden they disappeared. I know when we lived here before we moved to Cleveland, some time back, my daughter, who's now 25, came running in the house, and she said, "Mom, what does a UFO look like?" I said, "Why?" She said, "Because I just saw this thing hovering over the house, but there was no noise." I said, "What did it look like?" She said, "Well, it almost looked like one of the stealth planes that we saw in Alamogordo, but they weren't. It wasn't that." And she said she tried to connect with it, and it just kind of really zoomed off real fast and disappeared.
Do you feel that you might be an abductee? An alien abductee? You don't think they've ever taken you to one of the ships?
No.
Okay. When I was listening...
No, and because Indrid promised my father that would never happen.
Did your father ask him not to do that?
Yes. And Indrid promised my father that would never, ever happen. That he would make sure that never happened.
Was your father being abducted?
In his book, he says he was, and in my conversations with my father, he says he was. So, and my father never, ever lied to me, so I would say yes.
Now, your dad wrote the book, you can't even get a copy of this, Visitors from Lanulos. Actually,
you can. I have several paperbacks of it. It's available on Amazon.
The original?
Well, not the original, a paperback version of the original.
Oh. Let's see, I'm showing them now. I've seen like 3 different covers of your dad's book. I have no idea which one is the original. I have another picture of your book next to Visitors of Lanulos. It's with Harold W. Hubbard, and
Right.
it's turquoise blue and red. Is that the original?
That's the original.
Oh.
Harold Hubbard's name is only on it as author. I'm sure his family would argue with me, or someone else would argue with me, because, and my mom even told me this, because it was too expensive for my family to have the book published. I have letters from Gray Barker where my dad had sent the manuscript to Gray and wanted Gray to publish it, and Gray said he had too many things in the works and he could not do it. So that's why it says Harold Hubbard as told by Woodrow Derenberger. But the main manuscript was written by my father.
No, so then after your father, okay. Now I also, when listening to your dad's first interview, which you said was right a week after, when he was doing the interview, he said that Mr. Cold had asked him, where he was from, and he was telling them Parkersburg. But he said that Mr. Cold never said where he was from. So at what point did he tell your father that he was from the planet Lanulus?
Probably the second or third visit, according to what my father read. Now, a lot of these questions I'm not answering in detail on purpose, because my own book is due to be out in August of this year, called Beyond Lanulus, which is an accounting of what me and my family went through.
Okay, so what's this book?
And what I remember as a kid.
Okay, well, what is this book that I'm showing? Visitors from Lanulus, My Contact with Indrid Cold. Who wrote that book?
That was is that the big 8.5 by 11 version?
Well, it's turquoise blue. There's 3 men in black, little characters.
Oh, yeah, I hate that cover.
Who is that? Your book?
I took my dad's book and rewrote it, and I actually got 100 pages of stuff from overseas, from a UFO archive place, of previously unpublished material that I added into that book.
So this is the book, but with a different cover?
Well, yes.
Okay.
But that's also got extra information in it that was never published. The smaller version of that, the paperback version of my dad's book, is available, I believe, word for word from the way my dad wrote it.
And now, so like again, I'm showing the purple and the purplish version, and this one says by Woodrow Derenberger, Visitors from. Now, who wrote that book?
My father.
Okay, so the other one was okay. So it has a different cover. Is it the same content?
Yes, it's the same content.
Okay, and you have some of the original. The turquoise blue one.
No, I have some of the paperback version of the original.
I'm sorry. Okay. All right.
And I also have some of the one with the 3 little men on it.
Mm-hmm. Has anybody?
I hate that cover.
Has anybody contacted you about trying to get the original book? I heard it's worth like over thousands of dollars if you can get a hold of it.
Yeah. It is, and I've even put it out there that I've got it, and no, nobody's contacted me. I know there's one on eBay for like $3,000, and I have said that, I would sell mine for $1,000. It does not have the dust cover on it, and of course, it was my father's copy, so it's old and it's not in great condition. That's why I said I would sell mine for $1,000 if anybody really wanted to buy it, but nobody's offered. Although I have sold several of the paperback versions and the extended paperback versions, which are still on sale. People can private message me on Facebook under Tanya Derenberger. Tanya Derenberger Bowman. I'm proud I changed that. I hyphenated my last name finally for these purposes, or they can email me at Bowman Marketing, which is just BOWMANMKTG at yahoo.com, and find out how they can get a copy of the book.
All right. So,
and I will and if they mention that they heard about it on your show, I will give them a very special offer. I'll throw in free shipping and throw in a CD of my dad's interview, and only charge them like $25 for the book.
Wow, that's really nice. So
because through me, it's pretty much the only way they're going to get the extended version. Because Andy Colvin and I did this project together, and he took it off of Amazon.
Okay, wait a minute.
I think there are a few copies available on eBay, but prices on eBay are ridiculous.
Okay, who helped you with this book?
Andy Colvin.
Oh, I don't know who that is. Oh, okay.
He calls himself the Mothman photographer.
Oh, okay. So when your father came home and he told your mother, and Indrid Cold had told him, you have to let the authorities know, and I will at a later date confirm. Why? Does your father understand why Indrid Cold wanted the story told? Did he ever say?
No, he never did say. I don't know if it was exactly what it was. Like I said, between the years of 1986 and when my dad died in 1990, he really didn't want to talk about it at all at that point. I don't know why. I didn't question my father. I mean, I would ask him a couple questions, and he'd answer in very short sentences and then drop it. I know most of my family by then had tired of the story, and a lot of them had said, well, this is not true, I don't believe it, including my own brother, who we had to change his name before he would let me publish the book. I promised my mother on her deathbed that I would change her name because she didn't really want to be, her posthumously associated with it, even though she knew the story was true. She just wanted to drop it. In fact, Derenberger is not even on her tombstone. But I'm very proud of my father for standing up for himself as much as he did. And yeah, we got ridiculed a lot, and my brother got teased in school. Even when we went to Cleveland, we were at the eye doctor one time, and the eye doctor brought it up, and it's like, this was like 20 years later.
Did your father say that he went into the spaceship? Did they take him to their planet, Lanulus?
And that's in Dad's book too. That they did, and the planet Lanulus was a lot like ours. But I don't want to say too much because I urge people to buy the book and read it. As far as I heard you talking to Paul Eno about Indrid Cold and the Mothman, when the Mothman movie was being made, I received a phone call from John Keel, and I have no clue how he got a hold of me. But he did. He called me, and he warned me about the movie, that they were going to take a lot of artistic license with the movie.
Right.
The character of Gordon Smallwood has often been compared to my father because of the Indrid Cold thing, and that's not at all true. John Keel told me that it was supposed to be the way he wanted it done was that Mr. Leach, played by, I can't remember the name, was my father, and the part of...
Richard Gere?
Richard Gere played was John Keel.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, but that Mr. Leach, the professor that moved to the big city, and he said the whole UFO incident ruined his life and his marriage, and that was to be my father, but that everybody else was probably going to, because of the way they were rewriting the script and everything, everybody was probably going to compare Gordon Smallwood with my father, but that's not at all true. And the only correlation that Mothman and Indrid Cold have, the only thing they really have in common is the fact that, they appeared within, miles of each other, and the fact that they were around at the same time, and John Keel was investigating both about the same time,
Right.
and so he just put them both in the Mothman prophecies.
Well, according to John Keel, he was also getting calls from Indrid Cold.
Right, and I don't know how true that is because I did not discuss that with Mr. Keel. All we discussed was the movie.
I was really surprised to see that he wrote the foreword to your dad's book.
Yes.
Yeah, I was really surprised to see that.
Yeah, he wrote the foreword to Dad's book, and I got permission from his estate to write the entire foreword because there's only an abbreviated version of it in the original book.
So in your new book that you've rewritten the book, you took most of the information from the original book and added. So there's more information that wasn't
in the extended version.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow. So how often were you being visited? I mean, how many people have seen Indrid Cold? I mean, that's absolutely. And in fact, I don't ever hear anymore of any sightings of anybody being contacted with by Indrid Cold. I don't think there's any more books except for John Keel and your dad's book that even talk about having the encounter with Cold.
Right. I think Indrid Cold wanted to lessen the number of people that he visited and who knew about him, because he didn't want a whole lot of people out there talking about it. He handpicked who he wanted to appear to and who he wanted to talk to.
I just really interested.
He would honestly be at our house for days at a time.
You mean he would stay overnight?
Oh, yeah.
Well, did he bring luggage with him? Did he bring a change of clothes? Do they brush their teeth? What do they do?
You know what? I honestly couldn't tell you because I was sent to my room a lot, and on those times when he was over, it was like early in the evening, and Indrid Cold would give my dad a look, and that meant, Tanya, go brush your teeth and get in bed, and I was very strictly warned to not to sneak downstairs.
Wow. And I know Indrid, Mr. Cold told your dad that he said that I'm just like you. I eat, I sleep, I breathe, I bleed.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And what's amazing is he could breathe our air, so he could live on our planet.
Right. Yeah, their air apparently was just like ours.
What was his purpose of coming here? Were they planning to? When you saw him, did he look like he looked like a normal person? He looked like a normal person to you?
He did. He looked. I would say he looked. And I've told people he looked more Hispanic in origin. But every time I saw him was, like I said, it was mostly during the day, and he'd have sunglasses on and a hat and a black suit. How he had that black suit on was beyond me, because when he started visiting the house, it was in warmer weather.
Oh, and he had that.
My father originally saw him in November. He didn't start actually visiting the house until it started to warm up. I took it he didn't like the cold because, but because the cold weather, because they did not have cold weather on Lanulus.
Mm. Did he use the bathroom and go take showers and stuff?
I honestly couldn't tell you.
That would be interesting to know. Do you think their plans were to come to live on our planet? The only thing is, he asked your dad if he had to work for a living, and your dad said, yes, I have to work for a living. So what did they do? Did he ever, did your dad ever tell him what Mr. Cold ever talked about his planet? Did they work? How did they get food? How did they live? Did he ever tell you any of that?
Yeah, they farmed just like we did. They had ranches just like we did.
Were they vegetarians?
Mostly, and that's when my father quit eating red meat about that time for a while too. Yes, they were mostly vegetarians because they didn't have very many very much meat that they could consume, and their systems were not used to like our red meat.
Did they have?
They had fish. They ate fish.
Oh, so what kind of fish? Did he say what kind of fish they had on their planet?
No.
That would be interesting
and like
to know.
I said, by the time I got to be that age to where I could start asking those questions is when my father didn't really want to discuss it.
Oh my God. Oh, did you ask him to please talk to you? Because
yeah, I did, and I knew he wanted his story to live on, so he did in little bits and pieces. And again, like I said, my mother on her deathbed told me quite a bit too, that, she remembered meeting them, and that, my father knowing what she bought. And I still, when I go into a shopping mall, I still swear I see Indrid Cold, but as soon as I get close to where he would be standing, he's gone.
When you think you see him, why don't you do you try and communicate with him at that time?
Yeah, I did, and apparently my powers of telepathy were not as great as my father's.
Oh. Did they have...
And my father told me he may never communicate with me, but I can communicate with him by telling him my thoughts, and if it's something he thinks is important enough, that he will, do his best to communicate back with me. And again, like I said, we would go on vacation, and my husband always insisted on driving all night long, so I would sit in the passenger seat and stare at the skies, and every once in a while I would see what I would put my hand on a Bible and swear to that is Indrid's ship.
A chip?
Ship.
Oh, a ship.
Yeah.
Was it
I'm
following?
Sorry, it's getting very late for me.
I'm sorry, I won't keep you much longer. Was it following you? You could see it in the sky?
Yes, it was going about the same speed that we were, and then all of a sudden it would just disappear.
Wow. Was it in the same, did it have this, did it look like the description of what your dad gave for the spaceship?
I really could just see the lights. I really couldn't see. I'm sure that they're more modernized now. Like I said, my daughter saw the triangle ship above the house, and she ran in real fast to tell me, and by the time we got back outside, there was no sight of it.
Wow. Wow, I'm sorry. I know you're really tired. I would really like for you to try and use your telepathy to try and contact this Mr. Cold to see if he can help you with your disease, because I think he can.
Oh, I know he can, but there's reasons why he's not. I'm sure there are. I mean, my father told me that, there's a reason for everything that I will ever go through. And my mom always told me that too. And there's certain things that they can help with, and there's certain things that they can't. and there's certain reasons why, I'm going through this separation with my husband, and he hasn't filed for a divorce yet after 14 months.
And I'm
in a custody trial for my son.
So you don't think that you have any bad luck because of this Indrid Cold? You don't think any of that's rubbed off?
I think some of it probably has, but I haven't been contacted as much as my father has. I'm starting to see the ship more and more now that I moved into my own apartment. So I believe that somewhere down the road there probably will be some contact because I am living alone. Because when I was living alone for 6 months in Ohio, I had a little bit of contact, and I would see men outside my back door that resembled Indrid Cold, but by the time I got to the door and opened it, they were gone, and I couldn't find them anywhere.
I don't know if there's any questions from the chat room or not, but I know it's really late and you must be really tired. Is there anything else?
That's fine.
Do you want to tell the viewers again? I'm going to post up. So either one of these books are available. You want to tell them again how they can get a hold of you?
Yeah, they can get a hold of me on Facebook. Private message me on Facebook. Or they can email me at Bowman, BOWMAN, MKTG @yahoo.com. And I can give them more instructions on how they can get it, either one of the books. I will say that I have limited copies available of both books. So if they want them, they're going very quickly lately. I don't know why, but they are going very quickly lately. I'm going to have to order a new shipment of books here soon. But if they want them, they need to be, getting them soon. And if they want to pre-order my book, I can tell them how they can do that too. And that book is going to be called Beyond Lanulus, and it's due out in August.
Wow.
It was actually due out 2 years ago, but I've been having trouble. I had trouble with the first couple publishers that I picked, so it will be finally out in August of this year.
Well, I wish you a lot of luck with that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. I know you need to have some rest now, but I really appreciate it. And thank you so much for telling your story.
Problem. No problem. And I will tell you. I want to tell your readers that I've been having some strange requests when I get the book. When people order the book, they've asked me to autograph it. But if that's something that they want, then they're going to have to order it off of me rather than Amazon or eBay or someplace. And I really don't mind doing it.
Well, I wish you a lot of luck with that book.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, honey. Thank you. And hey,
Good night,
if you ever get a hold of Mr. Cold and you're able to ask for help, please let me know. You know I'm on Facebook. You know how to get a hold of me.
I know. I will. Well, I've been in a real financial crunch lately since I moved into my new apartment, and I'm no longer with my husband and all this custody fight and stuff. And I have had money come in that I can't explain where it was or why it came in.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, not very much. A little bit at a time, just enough to buy some groceries or send my lawyer in Cleveland $100 here and there. But yeah.
Well,
because we all know lawyers are expensive and they need paid too.
Yeah. Well, I hope that continues for you. But if anything,
so do I, and I'm hoping for the good luck of being able to get my 13-year-old son back.
Well, I wish you the best of luck, Tanya. I really do.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You.
Thank you. Good night. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Wow. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. Thank you, Paul Enos, and thank you so much, Tanya, for joining me on the show tonight. I really appreciate it. I thought it was a fascinating topic myself, something different, and I love doing these kind of shows. So everybody, thanks so much for joining me tonight. Please give my show a like if you liked it. For those that are new to the show, if you would please subscribe to my channel, I'd really appreciate that as well. I had a little excitement tonight. One of my big bulbs exploded. I don't know if you heard that or not. Anyway, thank you again so much. I will see you next week, next Thursday, for another live broadcast. I have a really awesome guest. I wrote down his name, and I know when I booked him that he was going to be fascinating. And it's something about, he does ghost hunting, but it's in a different way, and he's able to communicate and talk to the ghosts when he goes ghost hunting. But you'll find, I'll post for the show on Monday. Watching the show, I love you guys. I really appreciate you coming in every week. I love my mods. Thank you every week for joining me and modding my show for me. I don't think there was any issues tonight. Thanks, Michael. Yeah, it's really hot. I'm really hot. It's temperature-wise. It's warm in here. Okay, everybody, now that's it. I'm going to say goodnight to everybody, okay? So I'll see you all next week for another, I hope, another great show that you'll really like, okay? So good night, everybody. Love you. Good night. I love you. Good night.